Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. So unlike all the other videos we've done so far, we really have Gordon in front of us to do introductions because this is a very interesting board by ASROCK. I know nothing about it, so let's cut to the chase and let's get Gordon in to explain what this ASROCK board is about. ASROCK board, server grade motherboard. Gordon, take us through what this board is about.
Okay, right off. First and foremost, you can see it's from ASROCK RACK itself, and like most other server motherboard packaging, it's very plain, very nondescript, no fancy artwork on it whatsoever, indicating as to what's inside here. Probably wondering what's in here actually. Now, this is the instruction manual, all 2 pages of it. Another thing about server boards, when your manuals, they are very sparse, they cut right to the chase. So let me get right to the unboxing of this, and the unboxing is going to be pretty boring. But yeah, because as you're gonna see, not much things inside there.
Yeah,
so,
it doesn't have the bells and whistles of a typical gaming motherboard, so
yeah,
don't keep the hopes so high.
Yeah. So let's get it. Okay, so first off, we have this cable. This is the U.2 to ASUS SATA adapter. So basically this end plugs to the motherboard. These 4 times SATA or 4 times SAS devices. This is the cable. Let's put that here. We have the back plate. And we have the motherboard itself. And that's pretty much it. That's all there is in the box itself. I mean, even this manual here, it wasn't even in the box. We had to go and print it out from online via PDF. So let me just try to angle this thing a little bit. Yeah. You may be wondering what this is. This is the ASROCK RACK Rome D8-2T AMD EPYC motherboard. So as you can see here, we've already installed a EPYC CPU down here. In this case, this one here is the AMD EPYC 7302P 16-core 32-thread CPU right inside here. So in a bit, I'll take you through on the details as to what are the key features of this board, how it compares with let's say a desktop grade motherboard, its special features. I'll go through that in a bit.
Okay, cool.
Right, so now we have a close-up look of this ASROCK RACK motherboard itself. Now, what makes this board a little bit so special is that, like the name suggests, it's designed for the AMD EPYC Rome line of CPUs. It's fully PCIe Gen 4 compatible, so all the slots, M.2 and all that are all PCIe 4.0. Let me take you through from the top to the bottom some of the key features of this motherboard. So from the top down here, you will kind of notice that, yeah, for CPU power in, it has 4 plus 2, so that gives you a theoretical maximum of about 400 watts, which is okay because even the 64-core AMD EPYC 7742 doesn't draw anywhere near that much power, probably 250 watts at the most, at the highest. Then followed by that, we have the 24 pin right over here. And the one thing that makes this a little bit special is that, yeah, you notice the connectors for this. Normally on most other motherboards, this would probably be here, and this will probably be rotated 90 degrees like that. So you'll notice for this, it's all clustered here. Then as we move downwards, you will be able to see 8 RAM slots. Now for EPYC, you only can install registered ECC RAM. But registered ECC DDR4 comes in much bigger capacities than what you may find in a consumer board. While for normal consumer board, maximum currently is about 32 gigs. This board is capable of taking much bigger modules such as 64, 128 or even 256 gigs of RAM itself. So this board, if you to populate all 8 slots with, let's say, 256 gig RAM modules, you will have a theoretical maximum of 2 terabytes of RAM. That is mind-blowing. Let's move on right along. Now we have a couple of other connectors here. Okay, there's a USB 3 right over here. USB 3 connector is here. We have, which is very surprising for a server grade motherboard, we have a USB Type-C Gen 2 front header right over here. So let's say if you were to put this into a case with a Type-C Gen 2 connector in front, yeah, you could plug it in and it'll work. And right next to it, we have a USB-C Type-C Gen 2 connector right over here. I'll go through a bit on the rest of the features here in a bit. So just to let you know that the USB Type-C is here to the back, the USB Type-C to the front, the connector is here. To move right on downwards, there's many features here from this point onwards, but I'll just focus on some of the more notable ones. The U.2 connectors are here. All the fan connectors are all in one row here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 fan headers all in one row. So again, in a lot of other motherboards, which you'll see in a bit, these are usually scattered like all around the board, and in this case, they're all lined up one row. That's the PCIe power in connector. That's for GPU configs to give extra power to the PCIe slots. For those configs, like let's say 4 2080 Ti, 4 times Quadro RTX 8000, that kind of thing. Okay, and we move right on downwards. The usual front fan headers for the postcode display. And the one thing that makes this board very interesting, some people may say this is probably hell freezing over on Earth, is we have a connector here for Thunderbolt 3, or to be more exact, this is the 5-pin Thunderbolt 3 connector. So what you could do is that you could get the ASROCK Thunderbolt 3 expansion card, plug it into one of these slots. The cable from the expansion card plugs into here to authenticate that yes, I am Thunderbolt 3 certified, and therefore a Thunderbolt 3 PCIe expansion card will work. So yes, you can add on Thunderbolt 3 to this motherboard. Now, why I say this is hell freezing over, well, you do have to remember that Thunderbolt is an Intel standard. So to see an Intel standard suddenly appear on an AMD motherboard, where previously it was only the purview of Intel platforms such as Z370, Z390 and X299, yeah, really, this is hell freezing over on Earth. Now to move right to the other features, we have 2 M.2 slots down here. Both of them are PCIe 4 compatible, so you could put 2 PCIe 4 M.2 SSDs right over here. Now, the best part of this board is that it has 7 PCIe slots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. According to the information that we have gotten, each of the 7 slots is capable of what is known as bifurcation. So what this means is each of the slot is capable of PCIe 4.0 times 16. What bifurcation means is that you could split this into, let's say, 2 slots of PCIe 4.0 times 8. What this means is that you could, in theory, run 2 PCIe devices out of one slot at a theoretical bandwidth of PCIe 4 times 8 each. So 7 times 2, can you imagine this guy running 14 GPUs? Whoa! Just imagine 14 RTX 2080 Ti's all in one row. Of course, you have to figure out how to split the signal, how to mount them. If you can figure that problem out, yes, this board is theoretically capable of doing that. Coming to the back of the board itself, for the I/O itself, that's the USB Type-C connector. And we come to here, we have 2 Intel X550 10GB LAN ports right over here. 1, 2. There's a VGA port right over here. Now, you may probably be wondering, wait, EPYC doesn't have any iGPU on board, so how does this thing work? Now, here's the thing. For this board, it has a ASP BMC controller, which powers the VGA, which also powers the IPMI, the remote management port, which you see right over here. And there's a COM port, 2 USB 3 ports, and a little switch down here, which according to the manual does something to reset the BIOS. I presume this should be the BIOS reset switch. So yeah, that probably takes you through the whole feature of the board itself. As to what this IPMI board does, I'll probably get into that in a bit, but suffice to say, at your operating system level, you will only see these 2 ports. This is used for remote management. Like, let's say you want to start up the set, power down the set, restart, that kind of thing. Basically, base level. OS level, you will not see this port at all. Yeah, that takes you through on the features of this board itself. So now we come to the next part. You probably want to know, how does this thing look like next to, let's say, a more consumer-oriented motherboard? Let's get to that. Right, so now we come to the comparison. So in this case, I have the ASROCK RACK EPYC Rome motherboard on this side, and on the left, we have the ASUS ROG Zenith 2 Extreme. Now, they have a couple of similarities, but they have quite a number of differences, of which I will go into in a bit. First off, the one thing that will probably strike you is that this guy is green. It is very green. Whereas in contrast, this guy is a splash of like patterns, chrome, color, that kind of thing. So if you were to power up this board, as you probably see in the link down here when we did the video on when we power this guy up, this guy is full of lights and bling and all that. You're not gonna find that on the EPYC motherboard. If you were to look at these two, first thing that comes to mind is the orientation of the RAM slots as well as the sockets themselves. For the Threadripper motherboard itself, if you look from the front to the back of the board, from the front of the board, we have the first 4 RAM slots, followed by the socket, which is longer this way and the shorter horizontal end is this way. Then we have the other 4 RAM slots like that. This is good for desktop config, like a full tower, and this will affect things such as the airflow, the mounting of the heatsinks. In contrast, you will see that the AMD EPYC motherboard itself, you'll notice the first striking thing that strikes you is that the RAM slot as well as the CPU socket has been rotated 90 degrees compared to the Threadripper board. Why would you go to the trouble to rotate the socket just like that, even though theoretically they are mechanically the same socket? Well, it's more to do with the airflow, especially in a 1U or 2U configuration. In a 1U or 2U config, they usually will have big powerful fans in the front down here, and then these will be blowing air straight through. So if you were to have the RAM slots, say, like that, what's going to happen is that in a 1U especially, where the case is not much higher than the RAM, so what's going to happen is that the air from the front fan is going to hit, and then it's going to block the airflow to the CPU itself, as well as everything else that's behind. So that's why for server EPYC motherboards, they are rotated this way, so that when you rotate them this way, so you just imagine your airflow is going from here to here. You can see in this configuration, not only does the CPU get a very clear path of air straight through, some of the air goes through this heatsink, goes out to the whatever heatsink is sitting on the CPU itself, as well as the air can go straight through the RAM itself, in between the slots, in between the RAM. So this ensures maximum cooling and ventilation for both the CPU as well as the RAM modules itself. Now, the orientation of the socket itself also does affect the cooling solutions that you will decide on this kind of sets. For example, this is the Arctic 33TR. The mounting points for coolers for both Threadripper and EPYC are the same actually. So in theory, you could take a Threadripper cooler like this and you could mount it on the EPYC. But this is the problem when you try to put it on the EPYC. Now, if you were to put it on the Threadripper itself, let's pretend it's like that. Yeah, so let's say you were to mount it like that, it looks fine. Air comes in from here, goes out this way. Now, the problem stems when you're trying to use this on the EPYC. When you bring it here, because of the orientation of the socket itself, instead of this way, it is now this way. So if you imagine your front is here and your back is here, what's going to happen is that your front air is going this way. This thing is going to blow air right to the back into the side of the server rack casing. Not that it's going to fit anyway, because this thing is too big to fit in even into a 4U case. There are certain situations where you can, if let's say you were to mount this motherboard into a tower where there's ventilation on the top, then yes, the air goes out and then gets thrown upwards, you're fine. But if you were to use this in, like, let's say a server configuration, you are going to need something like this fella. Now, you will notice one thing about this fella versus this. Yeah, you can see this is longer this way and shorter this way, whereas this one is the other way around. Very short at the front and back, but it's very long in terms of length. So yeah, you can see there's a particular contrast in the way they're mounting. This is the proper one that you should use for an EPYC server config. If you were to take this and you were to mount it here, it's just nice. So air comes in from the front air intake fans, blow in to the back, you're fine and dandy. Of course, this being a 2U fan, it's going to be much noisier than this fella here, which is a 120mm air cooler. Now, you may probably be asking the question, can I use this for Threadripper? Yes and no, especially for current gen Threadrippers. Both for physical reasons as well as for reasons pertaining to TDP limits. This guy over here is rated for about 180 watt TDP, which is fine when you're going for, let's say, the 16 core EPYC or the 32 core EPYC. But as we all know, the current gen 32 core Threadripper is not 180 watt TDP. It's about 280 watt TDP. This is only rated for about 180. So yeah, this guy is not going to work very well on a Threadripper. And besides, even if you could solve the TDP problem, you have to deal with the fact that, yeah, it's pointing the wrong way. Even if you could get around that problem by having a case that has ventilation on the top, main fact is that it looks kind of weird. Yeah, even though the two of them are mechanically compatible with each other, there are valid reasons why the EPYC cooler is designed for the EPYC and the Threadripper cooler is designed for the Threadripper. There are some other minor differences pertaining to the fact that, of course, this guy has a lot of extras such as RGB connectors. The sound chip, the EPYC board doesn't have any sound chip whatsoever. So if you want to get sound coming out from an EPYC system, you need to plug in a discrete sound card. For the Threadripper, you have a Realtek codec on board. The other thing that actually separates them is, if you were to remember, I mentioned just now that this guy has a A-Speed BMC as well as VGA controller. So let me rotate the two of them. That's the VGA port. Now, The thing between these two is that because this motherboard has the S-Speed controller, the chipset is somewhere here, you have a VGA out here. So you could run the EPYC motherboard without a GPU. If let's say all your tasks are only CPU based only. The Threadripper on the other hand, you will notice on the back I/O, there is no HDMI, there is no DVI, there is no VGA, there is no form of video output whatsoever. That's because Threadripper also doesn't have any integrated GPU. So for a Threadripper, you have to put a discrete GPU to get this guy to even turn on and to see anything. For the EPYC board, you can just take a basic VGA monitor, plug to the back, and you'll get video output coming out from the back itself. The one last thing that actually separates these two is the IPMI port on the EPYC. The EPYC board is designed for, like, let's say server deployments, that kind of thing. The set may probably be in a server room or in a data center where the IT administrator would not be able to access it physically at a moment's notice. So the IPMI port is to allow the IT admin to be able to remote in and do tasks such as power up the set, shut down the set, restart, adjust the BIOS without actually having to physically be where the set actually is. The Threadripper doesn't have capabilities such as this. So these are the two major differences between these two motherboards as well as these two platforms in general, the EPYC as well as the Threadripper. That was a very long description of these two. We'll move further along as we will see as we can power this guy up and show you how this guy runs.
Yeah, so now we have gone through the board. Very lengthy explanation, sorry for that. Yes, Gordon, on first impressions, what do you think of this server grade motherboard?
It's rather interesting, although I was like rambling a lot about it because it kind of kept my interest quite a fair bit. I've done several server systems right over the years, and what I can say is that this guy is quite unique in many aspects itself. As I've highlighted earlier in the video, we shall see what happens when we power this guy on. When we do a part 2, I'll take you through how the BIOS and all that works, as well as some of the unique things of how this board operates and that kind of thing.
Yep. So as mentioned, if you want to see a part 2 of the power on, let us know in the comment sections below. Like to see more of such server grade motherboards, interested in such workstation builds, let us know in the comments. Yes, this is our first few server grade of the year, so you have not checked through, you also can see our other server grade motherboard, which is the video we did for the EPYC Rome motherboard. If you like the video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel by clicking on the I, and click on the bell when you click subscribe. So with this, Gordon and I say goodbye again.